Hi everyone, this is Eric Bond, the founder of Beat The GMAT, and we have a very exciting presentation today called Indian Applications That Worked, with worked being emphasized. And I'm delighted to be co-hosting today's session with one of our favorite teams to work with, Admissionado, and of course Jon Frank, who is the founder of Admissionado. In a moment, I'm going to hand it off to Jon to introduce himself as well as get into the presentation. Today we're going to have some very interesting real profiles that we'll be exploring for successful Indian applicants, including our guest Vijay, who is here with us today. And the way that this is going to work is Jon is going to go through his slides. He just has a couple prepared, as well as some of the profiles with Vijay on the line, as well as some other examples that he has prepared. We will have a chance towards the end of this presentation to take your questions live. So if you have a question that you would like to pose to Jon or during this session, the best way to do that is to post your question as a new comment right in the chat box area on the right-hand side of your screen of this GoToWebinar platform. Our teams are going to be reviewing the questions as they come in, and we will cycle those questions back up to Jon toward the end of this presentation during the Q&A period. So with that, Jon, I'm going to hand it off to you. Thanks for coming for today's session.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Thanks for the intro, as always. Hello, everybody. I would imagine that we have people clocking in today from all over the world, especially here in the U.S. and India as well. So that's always very exciting. You know, I've done I don't know how many of these types of presentations on various topics, but it's true. Just as Eric says, today's presentation is a little bit different. I'm pretty excited about it. In addition to my sharing, you know, a lot of the experience that my company and that I have had working with Indian applicants over the past 5 years, we've also got a live guest. Vijay is going to walk us through his experience. He was successful this past year. And I also handpicked a couple of interesting cases as well to talk through. So looking forward to getting into it. We will have about 10 minutes worth of questions at the end, so plenty to talk about. With that, let's get into it, folks. All right, it's going to take about 30 minutes or so. You know, a big part of what we like to do, by the way, I did see the movie Om Shanti Om when I visited India recently, and it was fabulous, if a little bit long. We're going to talk about just some general things that we find when working with Indian clients first. Then we're going to pass it off to Vijay. Vijay is going to walk us through his background as well. I may ask just a few questions, some Q&A back and forth with Vijay. And if you, by the way, if the audience have questions for Vijay, we encourage you to go ahead and ask those questions too. Vijay and I will both be fielding Q&A at the end of this presentation. In addition to Vijay, I have a couple of resumes, a couple of things that I want to talk about, which will be interesting as well. I will conclude with my own application experience before going into Q&A. So, enough intros. Let's get into it. People in the U.S. have an interesting relationship with India. Okay, for better or for worse, you know, there's this preconception, especially if a guy is doing some technical work. You know, it doesn't need to be IT to be technical. But what do we think about when we think about India? Well, for better or for worse, you know, outsourcing, right? You call the 1-800 number when something breaks. There's a good chance the guy you talk to is going to be Indian. Okay, this is a challenge. This is a challenge. High tech, we think about poor, we think about foreign. Okay, now listen, I've been to India. Okay, I know that this is not, you know, this isn't what I think. This is not what my experience has been. But this is the preconception that admissions committees have, right? We're afraid that people from India are just different from people in the U.S. Foreign, different. Okay, but we also know, of course, that India is on the rise. I mean, we did cases back when I was at HBS. You know, India, China. And there were even some cases, who's going to win, India or China? You know, couldn't help but raise your hand and be like, I don't know, does the U.S. even have a chance? You know? But anyway, this is what people in the U.S. know, or at least what they think that they know. Now, the question is, why is this important? Okay? The reason it's important is because people in the U.S. think that you're foreign. They think that you're different. You know, perhaps because of the outsourcing preconception, they may think that you're not capable of big picture thinking. Okay, you're not capable of being a deal guy. You're used to being in a supporting role. Okay. So anyway, this is what you need to overcome. Had you been born in a different country, by the way, I give a similar speech to folks that are in China. There are different preconceptions that people in the U.S. have about the Chinese. Okay, but these are the challenges that you're facing. You need to overcome these things. You need to try twice as hard to prove, hey, I'm not an IT guy. Hey, I'm not a support guy. Hey, I'm not that foreign. I'm not that different. I'm just like an American. I think just like everyone else does. When I get to the U.S., I'm going to fit in. Okay? What else? Well, for better or for worse, Indian test scores, they just tend to be very, very high, and we're going to talk about what that ends up meaning. But, so what do we think about Indians in the U.S.? Well, we think that you're very, very smart. Okay, but does that lead to a lack of creativity? Is part of the trade-off, is it possible to be really, really good at tests, but maybe also really good at soft skills? Okay, maybe it is, but there is a preconception also in the U.S., okay, that, maybe people are one-dimensional. Okay, how can you be so good at test scores and also be good at soft skills? It's tough. It's unusual. Okay, so our people from India, our people from the East, too technical. Okay, listen, and it's not that I believe that this is true, but again, these are misconceptions. Okay, this is what the admissions committee believes. This is what you need to overcome in your application. You need to try twice as hard as you would had you been born in the U.S. Okay, proving that you have soft skills, that you have creativity, that there's more to you than just back office. Okay, international experience is also very important, international perspective. Why? Well, because so many people from India have never left. Okay, if you've never worked for an international company and all of your background is limited to, call it, a family business in Hyderabad, okay, one of the things that a U.S. admissions committee or any Western admissions committee is going to worry about is, hey, listen, this guy's never left. He's going to have trouble fitting in. He's going to have trouble making friends. Okay, so it's incumbent on you, the Indian applicant, okay, to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are able to fit in, that you are able to do all of these things, even though the odds appear to be stacked against you. Okay, so let's make it nice and simple. Essentially, we need to get from this image of backsourcing, back office support, okay, to this other image of being the big picture guy, being the Apple guy. Okay, so that's the vision, that's the challenge. And that is why we invited our friend Vijay. By the way, this is not a picture of Vijay. I just like to have fun with pictures from time to time, keep things interesting. But that's why we invited Vijay to share his experience. I'll be 100% honest here. I did not tell Vijay what to say at all. I simply sent him an email and said, hey man, put together 4 or 5 slides. This is what he wrote. I didn't change a word. So this is the God's honest, unadulterated truth from Vijay's perspective. Vijay was successful in his application, and he's going to be going to INSEAD. So, Vijay, with that, brother, the floor is yours. I may interrupt you every now and then to ask you some questions, but why don't you take us through your background and your experience of applying this past year?
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. As you can see my profile, I have non-IT background, purely chemistry and metals. I did my Master of Science in Germany. In India, I studied chemical engineering. Since 2005, I have been living in Europe. You can see volunteer activities. I have more than 20 years volunteer experience. I'm with Amnesty for 4 years, Greenpeace for 3 years. In India, I was part of National Cadet Corps, also Scouts and National Service Scheme. I don't have typical Indian profile. My GMAT score is below 700.
Love it. Hey, Vijay, let me ask you just a couple questions. Why did you choose to go to Europe, of all places in the world?
Honestly speaking, I didn't have much money to study in the US. When I finished my bachelor's, at the time Germany was the only country which offered a free education in English for foreign students, so I applied to Germany.
I gotcha. Well, good. And do you speak some German now?
Yes, I studied German and I also learned Dutch.
Oh, good for you, man.
Yeah,
Oh, all right, and I also see on the slide your GMAT is below 700.
yeah.
I mean, was that, I mean, obviously you know that as an Indian applicant it's difficult to apply, and now you're applying with the GMAT that's a little bit low. Did that make you nervous, and what did you do in your application to overcome that low GMAT score?
Yeah, in the beginning, after when I got, I wrote GMAT only once. When I got below 700, I also registered for taking GMAT again. Then after a month, I realized I have to focus more on my essays because GMAT is only one part of the admission criteria which the schools are looking at. So I highlighted my international experience. I highlighted my volunteer experience to overcome my below 700 GMAT score.
I got it. So you did. Well, good. Let's get into it. It sounds though like what your approach um, was essentially to put your best foot forward and to focus on the things that you had going for you. So
Yes.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's all right. You're on. Next slide. Do it.
Yeah. I didn't study at IIT. My university in India is unknown even to the people who are from my province. I didn't get any gold medal. Actually, I failed in 2 exams, the 2 in mathematics. My GMAT score also very low in quantitative. To overcome my low scores in quantitative, I highlighted the quantitative aspects of my work. As a researcher, I do a lot of modeling for metals. So by highlighting my quantitative skills at my work, I overcame my low GMAT score. Also, I don't work for any Fortune 500 companies. It's a very small company, only 250 employees. I don't have any direct report. Nobody reports to me. But to overcome this one, as I already mentioned, I have 20 years volunteer experience. Here in Europe, I lead 80 volunteers for Amnesty International. I hosted benefit concert for untouchables in India and many actions for Amnesty. So I highlighted my leadership experience with Amnesty International. Also, I don't have any budget responsibility. To overcome this one, I was a treasurer for Amnesty International for 2 years. There I did budget for Amnesty, so I overcome this lack of budget responsibility at my work. I didn't have any promotion. I'm a researcher for more than 5 years in the same title. And I also didn't have any friends or family members to guide my MBA application process. So, what I'm trying to say is MBA is not only for IITians, or you don't need to work for Fortune 500 companies. If you can highlight aspects in your work, anyone can get into any business schools.
Love it. I love that lesson. So many folks from India say, gosh, I didn't go to IIT. Do I have a chance? And yours, whenever somebody asks me or somebody who works for us that question, I love to describe your background. I had never heard of your college. It was interesting to hear you say, though, that a lot of people in your province have also not heard of your college. Did you find that that was a good experience? I mean, did you learn anything at college, or was it not even meaningful to you?
I learned a lot at my college. For example, even if it doesn't matter when the reputation of college doesn't matter that much for me, because I learned my skills, not only at college, even outside the college. So my language skills, also the volunteer experiences when I was at the college, those things really helped me, because if I were from IIT, I would be one among thousands or one among 10,000s. But I was from a small college where I had plenty of opportunity to grow myself as a person. So that really helped me a lot.
That's great. That's a neat point. And by the way, it reminds me briefly, I'll tell just a quick story before moving on. I went to Harvard for business school, it's not a school known for real estate, okay, even though I had done real estate before, and I would go on to do real estate after. I mean, why am I making this point? Well, the reason is, when the real estate companies came recruiting at Harvard, I was actually in a fabulous position because there just weren't that many real estate guys. You know, imagine if I were trying to get a marketing job out of Kellogg. You know, it would be very, very difficult because, just like you said, VJ, it'd be one of thousands. You know, so this sounds like a similar point. You know, you go to a smaller college, or even you start working for a smaller company, you really have the chance to distinguish yourself. There's certainly nothing wrong with that, whether you're talking about a work setting or whether you're talking about a school setting. So I think it's a fabulous point. All right, VJ, walk us through your application process, brother.
Yeah, I wrote my GMAT in August last year. As I live in Europe, I had a chance to visit many schools. For me, I don't want to apply to any schools without visiting them. It's like buying a car or buying a house, or even getting married to someone without seeing them. Then I thought, okay, instead of taking GMAT again to improve my score, I spent around 4 months to write my LBS essays. You know, the essays were really tough for me. Then I wrote essays for IMD. I was invited for the interview, but I'm still waitlisted at IMD. Then I wrote essays for NCR. Then finally I got a dream call from NCR. I got admitted into NCR. I also applied to HEC Paris. It has rolling application. Along with the admission, I also got 12,000 euros merit scholarship. This was my application process.
That's great. Couple questions here. So let's see. So you were admitted, not bad, admitted in INSEAD and HEC.
Yes.
If you were to get, and are you still waitlisted at IMD?
Yes, I'm still waitlisted.
Okay. But by the way, for everybody, I want you to know that, I mean, we work with VJ, but I'm asking him these leading questions because I want him to tell his story. If IMD were to call you today and say you've been accepted, would you go?
Yeah, it would be a difficult choice to make. Because,
difficult choice, right?
Yes, because the IMD and NCR both are great schools. You know, IMD has, as I have industry background, if I get into IMD, it will be easy for me to get into a middle management level in any industry. Mm-hmm. But I am planning to work in Singapore and Asia after 2 or 3 years. So the dual campuses of NCR also good for me. You know, NCR candidates they have different backgrounds, and also the age starts from 24 to 31. But for IMD, it's more mature candidates, so it will be a difficult choice to make.
Yeah, difficult choice. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there. It is a difficult choice. I think a lot of people on this call are probably familiar with, you know, certainly LBS and even INSEAD, but maybe less familiar with IMD. For what it's worth, I mean, I encourage everyone to check that school out. It's a very small class, but if you wanna be surprised, have a look at how much money those guys make when they graduate. IMD is a good school, and those guys make money. So anyway, I agree with. I mean, I'd love to once you do get that call, you know, let's get on the phone and talk about it. I mean, certainly INSEAD. I think probably you end up going to INSEAD anyway, given where you want to be when you graduate. But interesting that you know, it is an interesting decision to have to make, and of course, you know, what we would call a rich man's decision. Okay, man, good. So the last thing that we're going to ask VJ to do is walk us through some of the lessons learned, some of the tips that you've got that you'd like to share with. Gosh, we've got well over 100 people listening. So, what can you share?
Yeah, my best advice for prospective applicants is don't focus too much on GMAT. GMAT is only one aspect. Many people told me when I was going to apply, but I didn't believe. Then only when I wrote my essays, only when I got a call from INSEAD, I really believe GMAT is only one aspect. So for me, essays are really important, where I highlighted my creativity, initiative, and the soft skills, which you already mentioned. On my essays, I showed I'm not just a research guy. I'm not one-dimensional. No, I'm kind of an all-rounder. I have international background. I have volunteer experience. So these things I can highlight only on my essays, not on my. The GMAT will not tell these things about me. So also for me, yeah, most of Indian candidates, I read somewhere 40,000 Indian applicants apply to MBA schools every year. For example, if I were reluctant to pay 1,500 euros for admission consultant, I might not have gotten to INSEAD. For me, the only way I can differentiate myself from other Indian applicants is my essays. So that is the reason. No, I got a help from admission consultant. The other important thing is, if possible, visit campus. It's very, very important. Only if you go there, you will know whether you will know whether you are fit with the school is fit for you. If not possible, please attend MBA information sessions. And also other aspect is not only the MBA brochures, not only from the information you get from the MBA websites. I please try to read the case study or books of the business schools you target. For example, I wanted to get into INSEAD. Then I bought a book from Professor Craig Smith who wrote on corporate social responsibility. I also bought a case study of INSEAD, Tata Steel, because these were my background. So the book and case study really helped me to write my essays and to inform INSEAD. I'm really interested in getting into INSEAD. Also, avoid technical jargons. It's really, really important for me. As a researcher, I don't have, most of times I use a lot of technical jargons, which was really hard for me to avoid, but somehow I managed. And the last thing is, join volunteer activities, not just before you write your essays. Please join at least 1 or 2 years before, because it will take time to get a leadership position. If you say you are just a member, it will not be that much value. It's better to be in the board, to show your leadership skills. Especially for me, as I don't have any leadership skills at my work, I was able to highlight my leadership skills at my volunteer activities.
Great, that's great stuff. Let me share one quick note here as well. This idea that, one of the great things about what Vijay is saying is that, some things that he's sharing with us, I think, are common knowledge, we all know, but other things that he's sharing, I believe, are not common knowledge, which is why it's so great to get this firsthand experience. One quick story I'd like to share, this idea of visiting the campus. I have contacts, and in some cases friends, with folks who are in admissions committees all over the world. I was once chatting with a friend of mine at one of the schools that BJ, in the admissions office of one of the schools that BJ has mentioned. And I asked this very question, and my question to her was, how important is it to visit from your perspective? How important is it to visit the school? And her answer, this was about 2 years ago, there's always something to learn in my business, right? Her answer was surprising to me at that time. And she said, honestly, John, it is maybe the most important thing in an application. And I said, really? Most important thing? But come on, I asked her, her school was in France. I said, how could that be? It's expensive to go. France is expensive, especially for these Indian candidates. What about scheduling and blah, blah, blah? And she said, listen, the reason I'm reminded of the story is because it links up with what Vijay said almost exactly. She's like, how can you possibly argue to me on your essays that this is the school for you, that this is a good fit, if you've never been? And I said, but what about the money and what about the time? And she said, no. She said, you got to go. The money's not an issue. If they're about to spend, $120,000 or whatever the equivalent is in euros, and they can't afford to make one trip out, she's like, I don't buy it. So anyway, Vijay, I've heard from the horse's mouth that what you're saying is absolutely right. And that was one of the few times in the past couple of years that I've been surprised that it was that important. Let me ask you one final question, VJ, then I'm going to move on. By the way, we've got a lot of great questions coming in, so keep those questions coming. And some of those are for VJ, which is great, and we'll get to those at the end. My last question, though, for VJ is essays. So you've said that essays are important. What was the hardest part for you? I know that you're not an IT guy, but you are a technical guy. You are an engineer. You know, you're not necessarily sitting back there with a white coat on the whole time, but you are a researcher, right? So what was the hardest part for you about writing the essays?
Yeah, the hardest part for me to combine my volunteer experience with my work, you know, to highlight my long-term or short-term career goal, you know. Then what I did, it took a really lot of time for me to understand what I really wanted to do, because I don't want to mention in my essays I want to be a consultant or I want to be an investment banker, because I don't have any background. As I am part of Amnesty International and Greenpeace. For Amnesty, I led business and ethics. For Greenpeace, I did for environmental aspects of actions. I am a sustainability researcher. Then, for my short-term goal, for my long-term goal, I mentioned that I wanted to be a director of corporate social responsibility, or like a chief green officer or chief sustainability officer. So combining my volunteer experience with my work to highlight my long-term career goal, that was kind of difficult for me in the beginning.
Right. So I guess, and just to repeat, BJ, what you've said here, you know, and I'm trying to sort of synthesize for the benefit of the people that are on the call. You didn't have a whole lot of leadership experience from work, right? So what you did was you sort of leaned on your volunteer experience, which was very, very impressive, and you combined that to sort of show that not only do you have leadership experience, but the volunteer piece actually informed your career goal, and you sort of combined it all into one logical story. Is that safe to say?
Yes, yes, John. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, you know, that's hard to do. And that I agree, that, you know, was the art form of your application. So anyway, congratulations. I'm excited to keep in touch with you, and I hope you get into IMD, if for no other reason than just so you can turn them down. And you know, I love rich man's problems, you know what I mean? All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna thank you, VJ, for your help. We will come back to you after I've got a number of Q&A. People want to know all sorts of things about you. Including, you know, some personal details. I don't know if somebody wants to take you out on a date or something, but we'll get to that in about 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, man. Thank you. Good. Let's move on. I want to talk about two other people. You know, and it feels to me, by the way, that we may not get to a big chunk of my presentation. And to be perfectly honest, I'm just fine with that. I think that maybe these interactive profile reviews are even more important. So. Let's talk briefly about somebody we worked with a year or two ago. Her name is, let's call her Anar. Again, she had an interesting background. Okay, take a minute just to look through her resume. I'll walk you through it as we go. She worked at Cornell University Medical College. This is in New York City, where she got her master's. Okay, she was also working there, doing some work for a period of time as well. She did another master's at Penn State, okay, and she did her bachelor's in Singapore. Okay, her work experience at the time of her application was just 1 year. Okay, this is, again, it's a couple years old. She'd only worked for a year, maybe even less. Okay, everything else she had done was, for the most part, research-oriented. Okay, she had an internship at Accenture. But really, she's a researcher. You know, she has a technical background. It's not IT. Take a look down at all those publications she had done. Okay, she's a researcher. Okay, she's got very limited business experience, and she's applying to business school. Okay, it's a challenge. All right, let's get into it a little bit. So I, as an admissions committee member, see an Indian applicant. Okay, here comes Anar. and I look at her background, first thing I'm worried about is, wait a minute, I'm worried that this is a degree collector. Okay, this is not just because she's Indian. But wait, she's got a master's from NYU, or New York Presbyterian, and she's got a master's at Penn State. She's only got 1 year of work experience. What does this person have to do with business? Why does this person want a business school? Okay, this is the first question that she and I worked on together. Okay, prove to me that you need a business degree. But I don't see business in your background. So what? You've got this 1 year of work experience. Yeah, it's not a lot of time. I don't care that you're, 28 or 29 or whatever you are. You don't have a lot of business experience. Why do you need to go to business school? Right? This isn't meaning of life school. This isn't, medical sciences school. This is business school. Are you a business guy? Why do you want to go to business school? Okay. By the way, this is something that we tackled together in 2 ways. One was, of course, in her career goals essay. We'll talk about that in a second with her work experience. But we also talked about it in the optional essay. In fact, she is an entrepreneur, and she always has been, and it's in her family. Okay? But anyway, it was one of the things that we talked about in the optional essay. No, I'm not a degree collector. Here's why all this makes sense. Okay, another thing that we struggled with Anar was that she is just a little bit older. Okay, she was, I think, 29 or something, maybe even 30 when she applied. And she was not applying to European schools. She was applying to American schools. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we talked about how she's willing to roll up her sleeves and work. Okay, what's the fear with older applicants? Yeah, the fear is that you're lazy. You're old. You're used to having people do the heavy lifting for you. Okay, so with her, we focused on the fact that, hey, man, I'm not old. I'm not tired. I'm ready to do this work myself. Okay, we also targeted 1-year MBA programs for her. There are great accelerated programs out there. Okay, great accelerated programs out there. Okay, not just the ones in Europe, by the way, but Cornell, for example, and Anar got in there, has a great program. Okay, finally, the last point that I want to make about Anar before we move on is, in fact, her work experience is brilliant. Sure, it's only 1 year, but look at that. It's life sciences management experience. I mean, she's a consultant, and she's in the health sciences space. There's nothing to apologize for here, folks. All right, her career goal is very clear. Even with all this with this degree collecting, her career arc makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we were successful with Anar, and it was an interesting case. Okay. By the way, we also dug that Accenture experience up. You'll see down there. Sure, it was 5 years ago, but I'll tell you what, man, it's business experience, and in the case of Anar, we needed it. Okay. By the way, some great questions coming in. Keep them coming. We'll get to them in about 15 minutes. All right. This is the last interactive profile review that we're going to do before I run you through some more ideas that I've had through the years. Here's another guy. Let's call him Archit. Archit was a reapplicant, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's take a look. He's also not an IIT guy. He's a University of Mumbai guy. Okay. He also did not work for a Fortune 500 company, not most recently anyway. Convonics is a very small company. Okay, $1.5 million internet marketing startup. That's a small business. Okay. He had a cool job there, but again, small company. What else? He's got some cool interests. I want to talk about that. See, special interests, very cool. All right, good. So take just a minute and look at this information. All right, good. So now let's get into it. So we already talked about not IIT. So what did we do? This is something similar to what BJ did. You need to prove that you're really smart, right? It's not rocket science. We're working with this guy. By the way, Archit is not his name. But so we're working with this guy, and he didn't go to IIT. So what does that mean? Well, we in the U.S. don't know much about the Indian education system, but we do know one thing. It's that you take a test, and based on the results of that test, the college that you go to is essentially assigned to you. Well, you have maybe some choices. Okay, but if you didn't get into IIT, 9 times out of 10, that means that you didn't do that well on your test, right? Okay, so what's the fear? Well, the fear is that you're not that smart. So what did we do? Well, we focused on how ridiculously smart he is. Okay, look at this. He's top 4% of his university. You know what? Maybe he shanked the test. Fair enough. You know, look at all the great stuff he did at Convonics. Okay, if you didn't go to IIT, you need to focus on how smart you are. Okay. By the way, you know, I see this question came in. Yeah, both of these guys got accepted. They both ended up going to, you know, let's call it top 10 schools. Okay. You know, let's talk about this idea of a typical Indian. Nothing could be further from a typical, you know, this idea of a quote-unquote typical Indian. This is something that Archit and Anar and Vijay all share. Okay, and maybe this is the most important lesson of this entire webinar. Okay, you cannot be typical. You cannot let admissions committees put you into a box. Okay, look at all the cool stuff that Archit's doing. He's got this awesome nonprofit stuff, just like Vijay did. Okay, all these NGOs, this Art of Living Foundation. Look at all the dance stuff that Archit did. Look at that. Jive, samba, salsa, cha-cha. You know, I'm now friends with this guy. We keep in touch. You know, I got to tell you, this dude, and again, we're calling him Archit. In fact, his real name is different. But he's a cool guy, you know, and that reads from his resume. Okay, don't be typical. Don't let admissions committees make stupid assumptions about you just because of where you were born. Oh, he's an IT guy. He's boring. He's good at math. He doesn't do anything else. Okay, don't let them assume that. Okay, one thing that you'll see, no matter how typical the backgrounds are, okay, you can't present yourself that way. All right, you just can't. All right, good. I've got 10 minutes here where I'm going to talk about my own experience. Let's see. I'm going to skip this slide altogether. I mean, real quickly, this is the one slide about my company. You know, about 50% of our client base is international. We've got about 12,000 applications. But when you work with us, there's just no smoke and mirrors. You know, the process is totally transparent. Take a look at our website. You know, you can decide who you want to work with. You can talk to any of them for free. You know, my business plan could not be more simple. It's hire the smartest people and then let you guys, you know, achieve something great together. By the way, it helps that my co-founder Raj, who's obviously of Indian descent, he's added a lot of value, especially for Indian candidates. All right, good. I'm not going to talk about my company anymore, I promise. Thank you for humoring me. Let's see. So this is essentially for Indian applicants. This is how we look at the world. There are 3 things that we can focus on together. Hey, Vijay, man, do me a favor and mute your microphone. I think you may be getting a little bit of feedback there, too. All right, let's talk about each one. We're going to have to go pretty quickly here. But for this slide, I want to talk about how important working for an international company is. Okay, working for an international company is critical. Why? Well, because of that international piece. Okay, we're worried that you do not have an international background. Okay, so even if you've never left India, fine. If you've never left India, it is what it is. I can live with that. But prove that you have an international perspective. Okay, there's a lot of family businesses in India, you know, especially since the law didn't even allow, until recently, you know, a truly foreign company to come in to India to invest. Okay, so of course, there's smaller businesses, family businesses. Fine, I get it, fine. But you got to do something to bridge that gap. Show that you understand the way that the international business community works. Okay, I work in a U.S. company. I've worked in an international company. Or if nothing else, there are people in my team who have an international perspective. Or, you know, I have done some international work. Okay, this is important. Right now, I know a lot of guys are on this call and they're saying, well, you know, I have an IT background. You know, John, you know, nobody really has an IT background of all the people that you've chosen. Okay, first of all, not true. You know, Ray, or we're calling him Archit, did have an IT background. We just didn't show him that way. Okay? But in fact, IT does lend itself very easily, very smoothly to these other areas as well. You know, the IT from IT into product development makes a whole lot of sense. Right? You understand how the back end works. Now you want to get into the front end. You know, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has an IT background. Right? He knows how to code. Okay, and that's nothing to apologize for. Okay, IT is a path into consulting. Makes perfect sense. Sure, I work in IT, but guess what? All I do all day is solve problems. Bam, that's what consultants do. I have the skills to be a consultant, right? It's not hard. It's actually pretty logical. Okay, IT is a path to marketing. You know, I understand the back end. I know how to make stuff. I know how to get stuff done. What I don't know is how to market it. Okay, and that's why I need an MBA. That makes sense too. Okay, and obviously IT is a path into entrepreneurship. You know, an IT background is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's actually good. If that's what you have, you can't pretend that you don't have it. Okay, the art form is how do you take that and project an interesting, logical, and exciting, compelling career goal. Okay, IT can lead us into any field. Right? By the way, a career change from an IT perspective is not just okay. It's probably necessary. Right? Usually we say career changes can be poisonous to applications. Okay, not true with IT. Okay, the art is you're not going to hide from your IT background. Right? The art is how do you make it into a strength? Right? That's your goal. You know, I don't know how we got, what, 200 people on this call. The trick is, and of those 200, I promise you, at least half come from an IT background. You can't pretend that you don't have an IT background. Okay, the art form is, how do you make that a strength? All right, this is a fun slide. You know, this though, I'm going to skip it. We don't have a whole lot of time here. The general idea here, though, just really quickly, is you know, you've got 5 minutes, you've got 7 minutes to describe yourself in an application. That's how long they're going to look at your application in. Okay, the first time an admissions committee sees your material, your package, it's 5 to 7 minutes. So what do you need to do? You need to do more than just describe your objective. You need to describe all the obstacles that were in your way. Okay, it's not about who's done the coolest stuff. It's about who has overcome the most to achieve what they've achieved. Okay, one guy's built 10 buildings, the other guy's built 1 building. Okay, the cooler guy is the guy that had a harder time, the guy that had to overcome more. All right, obstacles, stakes. All right. Let's see, there were some questions here about, I saw Q&A came in about letters of recommendation. You know, we talk about the 70-30 rule. This is not just for IT applicants or for Indian applicants, but for whatever reason we find that for the most part Indian applicants love to write their own LORs. You know, and I got to tell you folks, it's a bad idea, right? Especially if we're writing MBA applications. I mean, you've got 2,000 words that you've written, right? Even a short application is still at 1,000 words or more. Okay, plus all the essays and questions in your application itself, plus your resume. You've already taken your best shot. You know what I mean? Now give someone else the opportunity to talk. 70%, 70% of what a recommender does is to corroborate your story. Okay, if you say that you founded this company, you know, 70% is going to be your business partner. It's going to say, yeah, you know, I was next to him. Okay, I can corroborate his story. Okay, but the other 30%, that's going to be the part where he actually says something new, right? He says something that you didn't know. Okay, and that's important. Let them say something new. Let them add 30% of new material. Okay, that's important. The 70-30 rule. Do not do your own letters of recommendation. This is not a moral opinion. Okay, this is actually a strategic opinion. All right. Now, this is probably something that everybody knows, but I want to just run through the math real quick. You know, the GMAT has to be high. It's very, very competitive. Okay, why is it? Well, why does your GMAT have to be high? Because we haven't heard of your college, because we don't understand what your GPA is. Yeah, you're going to explain it, you're going to translate it, all that stuff. Okay, but we don't actually know what it means. That's why your GMAT has to be high. It's the only way we can judge how smart you are. Okay, I don't understand your transcript. Okay, your GMAT has to be high because it's the only way we can understand that you're a smart dude. Okay, and by the way, only 1 out of 3 students at top programs are international. Okay, that bodes very badly for everybody here, right? Stanford class is 330 people. That means 1 out of 3 is international. Gets you down to 110. Let's just pretend it's 50-50, men and women. What does that mean? It means that 55 men from all over the world will be accepted at the Stanford GSV. How many of those are going to be Indian? I don't know, 5, 10? Okay, the math is daunting. All right, the role of interviews. You know, I'm going to skip this slide. Interviews are challenging, okay? But I got to tell you, rather than going into all the specifics, we're going to open up for Q&A here in a minute. But rather than go into all the specifics, the MBA interview should be the easiest part of your application, okay? Why is that? Because I'm going to tell you, everything that you see on this slide, these are the questions you're going to be asked. Okay, only a few schools ask anything other than these questions. You will, and by the way, if there are different questions, there's a really good chance that those will be published, okay, before you get into the interview. You should be very, very, very well prepared when you get into your interview. There should be very few random questions. There should be very few surprises. And by the way, we can you can rehearse for those surprises as well. The MBA interview should be a layup. It's the only part of this process that is easy. It is actually in your control. Okay, so don't be afraid of MBA interviews. Okay, these are the questions. This is it. This is what you're going to be asked. 90% of what you're going to be asked is this. Okay, and for whatever the rest of that 10% is, we can train you for those two. So don't worry about interviews. Just as DJ said, worry about essays. You know, worry about other stuff. But don't worry so much about interviews. Okay, here we are. We've got 10 minutes left. I think it's probably more than enough time for some questions. DJ, I'm going to throw a question or two your way. Let me know if you don't feel comfortable answering the questions. Let me know, and I will feel free to answer them for you. But some of them are for you in particular. Okay, is that all right with you, brother? DJ, you there, man?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Give me just 1 second. I'll find a good one for you. You know, why don't you, DJ, tell us about your letters of recommendations? Who wrote your recommendations, and how did that go? Did you think they did a good job, and why?
Yes, for LBS, the mistake I did was I asked a recommendation from my colleague. So I think I shouldn't have done that. It is always better to get a recommendation letter from your superiors, your team leaders or managers. So for INSEAD and IMD, I got recommendation letters from my superiors. One recommendation letter I got from Amnesty, my superior at Amnesty International. So even the recommendation letter from volunteer organization worked really good for me.
Yeah, you know, DJ, I agree 100%. You know, the idea of submitting a letter of recommendation from a peer is really not a good idea. The idea of submitting a letter of recommendation from somebody who works for you is an even worse idea. Okay, and the reason, of course, is, you know, these guys are not in a position of power. You know, to really judge somebody, you know, ask them to do something for you and see how it goes. You know, I have very different opinions of people once they work for me, or even once I work for them. Okay, so Vijay's comment that, you know, maybe you picked the wrong guy for LBS is absolutely right. Now, another question that has come up, though, is how important are letters of recommendation? The answer is, you know, even to Vijay's point, that's probably not the reason he didn't get into LBS. I mean, LBS is the most competitive of all schools in Europe, of course. Letters of recommendation are important, okay, but they are not the most important thing. Essays are more important. Your work experience is more important, and of course, your career goal is more important, rather. Okay, so letters of recommendation are important, of course, especially on the margin. Okay, especially if, you know, you don't know and you're looking for a reason to take or not to take somebody, or if somebody just has a really, really bad or negative letter of recommendation, you know, that will show that you have poor judgment, for example. Okay, but it will rarely are letters of recommendation, you know, the sole reason. You know, essays are more important, work experience is more important, even test scores are more important, usually, than letters of recommendation. Here's another question, BJ, for you. Well, I figured these guys can ask me questions whenever they want, but a couple more good ones that they probably want you to speak to. One is, did the crisis occurring in the EU initially, or even presently, deter you from applying to European schools? VJ, that's for you, man.
No, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't deter me from applying to European schools because I live in Europe for more than 7 years. I learned German and Dutch, and I work for an European company. So actually, this is the time for me to apply to European schools now. Because I already gained experience here, I made my networks here, so it made sense for me to apply to European schools.
Got it. So you're not worried about that?
No, I'm not worried about that.
Okay, good. Let me ask you, VJ, one more question, and then I think probably, or maybe we can even handle one more before I turn it back to Eric. Here's a good one, still on letters of recommendation. How superior should the recommender be? That is to say, my immediate superior is a senior analyst versus a VP, for example. You know, my answer is easy. When it comes to letters of recommendation, you want to pick the guy that knows you the best. Okay, so for example, I don't care if the guy's got, 2 years of experience or if he's got 20 years of experience, if he knows you well or if he knows you poorly. Okay, the key is, how well does he know you? So much more important than how old he is, for example. Good. Let's see. Maybe we have time for one more question here. Perfect. Just looking for a good one. All right, here's a question about reapplicants. Okay. The question is, what is a good period of time to wait in between applications? Okay, is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Okay. And the answer is, there's no real answer to that question. Okay, is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Here's the only way you screw it up. Okay, the only way that you screw up an application, or rather a reapplication, is by applying too early. Okay, for example, here's what happens all the time. Somebody applies to a school round 2, and this isn't just for Indian applicants, by the way, this is for everybody. Somebody applies round 2, and then they get waitlisted, right? And then they hear in August, hey, sorry, you didn't get in. All right? And then they choose to reapply in September or October. That's just really awkward, right? Well, of course it is. Why? Well, because how much have you really improved your profile over the course of 3 months, 2 months, 1 month? Okay? The only thing that matters with reapplications, by the way, if anyone has questions about reapplications, we've done, in fact, I think it was with Beat the GMAT, we did an entire presentation on the art of the reapplication. It is an art form, people, but if I had to boil it down to just one sentence, it is this: how has your application improved since last year? Right? If you've only had 2 minutes, 3 minutes to improve your application, it's not good. It's not good. Anyway, with that, I think we're good. We got through some questions. If you have more, feel free to email me. I know we didn't get through everybody, but it's important that we end here on time. So with a couple minutes left, Eric, my friend, I turn the reins back to you, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, John. For those of you who might have joined us a little bit late into this presentation, we've been hearing from Jon Frank, who is the founder of Admissionado, providing some perspectives on Indian MBA applications that have been successful, including some very deep profiles, and also a very huge thank you to VJ, who participated today in providing his own profile as an applicant. So VJ, thank you so much for joining us. With just the time remaining, I want to mention a couple of very special things that our friends at Admissionado are doing to help the Beat the GMAT community. So the first note is that if you are interested in working with John's team at Admissionado and you're applying round 1 this year to business school, the Admissionado team is actually going to close off the working with new applicants by September 30th, so at the end of this week. And the reason why is there's just so much demand for their services that they need to cap it. They want to, of course, keep up the high quality of services that they provide, and there's just so much demand. So if you want to try to sneak in and start working with Admissionado's team for round 1 this year, you have a chance to do that between now and September 30th. And not only that, the Admissionado team mentioned to me before the call that they want to offer a 15% discount on all packages that they offer for applicants that they work with applying round 1 who sign up between now and September 30th. Now, just to emphasize this a little bit, Admissionado doesn't really do discounts. It's highly, highly unusual, actually, for them to offer these kinds of special offers. But they're doing it for the Beat The GMAT community because they really like our community, and we really like them back as well. So again, 15% discount on all packages offered by Admissionado if you're a round 1 applicant who signs up between now and September 30th. So, John, really thank you for that. That's huge.
Pleasure, man.
Okay. Well, I think that being said, I just want to thank one more time Jon Frank, the founder of Admissionado, for this great presentation. VJ, for providing your own story and insights into this session today, and also to Chris. He's a Admissionado guy in the background that you haven't heard, but he's sort of acting as a producer today. Thank you, Chris. And a huge thank you as well to the Beat The GMAT community members who came out to come to this session today. We wish you the very best of luck, and hopefully provided you some insights to help you in your admissions process this year. So all the best, and hope to talk to you soon.